You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast, where we talk about building, growing, and monetizing your online platform. I'm John Stange. It's great to have you with us again this week. And this week, we're going to be talking about something that I have kind of a deep conviction about. And it's something that I think a lot of people that are involved in creating websites or creating online platforms could really do a little bit better to notice. And not a lot of people notice this, but basically we're going to talk about this idea of making our platform a welcoming and user-friendly place to visit. And a lot of my convictions on this subject actually were formed in my years of church leadership. Now, I don't know if you're already familiar with my backstory. Maybe some of you are, maybe some of you aren't, but I'd like to take just a quick moment to share a few things about the journey that the Lord's taken me on over the course of my adult life. Most of it was unexpected, but it's all very interesting, I think, to me, and hopefully interesting to you if you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube. And if you'll bear with me as I share some of these examples, I'm actually going to show you how some of the lessons that I've been learning in church leadership can directly benefit your online platform, even if you don't share my personal faith. So even if you come from a completely different perspective related to some of the things that are, my personal beliefs, you're still going to find a lot of benefit in this. And I think you'll find it rather useful. And I hope that you find it encouraging as well. But let me give you a tiny bit of my backstory, and I'll show you how it led to some of these things that I utilize regarding my online platforms. When I was attending college, I initially planned to become a high school history teacher. I love history. I love people. I love teaching. I thought that would be a great context for me to serve others. I thought that would be a great context for me to make a difference in this world. And it certainly would have been if that's what God intended for me as well. But partway through my college years, I believe God led me on a different path. And during that particular season, I was attending a local church while I was living on campus, and I started volunteering with their youth ministry program. Many of the teens that were involved in that program, I happened to know from a summer camp that I was working at, and I was invited to become a volunteer there. And so I started volunteering with that. And then about a year and a half into that season, after volunteering for all that time, the youth pastor decided to accept a position at another church in a different role. He was going to become a senior pastor. And before he left, he had a meeting with the pastor of the church that I was attending and volunteering at. And he actually encouraged the pastor to hire me to be his replacement, encouraged him to hire me to lead that youth ministry. And that pastor sat down and had a conversation with me, and he ended up taking the youth pastor's recommendation. He offered me the job, and he gave me the opportunity to experience what it was like to work on a church staff. I hadn't really experienced that before, but now I was about to get a taste of that. And I liked it. After serving in that role for a while, after gaining more experience with leadership and with public speaking, I started to realize just how much this was a good fit for how I was shaped. It was a good fit for my personality. It was a good fit for my talents. And I became convinced that I was being called to serve as a full-time vocational pastor instead of a history teacher. And by the way, that was a very interesting conversation with my soon-to-be wife. My wife and I, we were dating at the time, and she thought she was about to marry a history teacher. And then I went and switched things up, very drastically different, manner of living, versus being a history teacher or being a pastor. But she said, you know what? Somehow I always thought I was going to marry a pastor when I was growing up. And so this makes total sense to me. So I believe God was preparing her heart for that. And as I started sharing this change with other people that I knew, most people in my life heartily agreed that this was the right choice. So I completely changed my career trajectory. And since 1998, so for 25 years now, I've been serving in church leadership. And it's been that in and of itself has been quite the educational experience. And during the remainder of my college years, I often wondered about this, what it was going to be like, and what kind of context I would serve in church leadership once my college years were finished. I wondered if I would serve in maybe an established church context, or if I would get involved in starting a new church, which most people that are involved in doing that, they refer to that as church planting. And I tend to be very entrepreneurial, which is probably not a surprise if you've listened to more than one episode of this podcast. But I wondered if I'd get involved in planting a new church. And I wasn't sure. But for the first decade of my life after graduating college, I served in well-established churches. I served in one church for a little while and then served in another church for a little while over the course of that decade. I loved that experience, but I have to confess to you that during that entire time, I just had an itch to experience something that was that entrepreneurial side of church leadership. I wanted to help start new churches. And in 2008, so 15 years ago from right now, I was presented the opportunity to replant a church in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. The church had less than 10 people. I think many of the Sundays they had about 6 people that were attending, and it was in the process of closing down. And so an opportunity was presented to me to replant this church. So it'd be essentially a church plant starting fresh, but I would have at least a few of the people that were the remnant of the previous church that would stick around and help. And basically, after I met with the remnant of people who were there, I became completely convinced that God was calling me to move to that community and attempt to replant that church. My wife, my family, everybody was on board with this. The various ministry boards that I had to seek approval from, they were also on board with this. And so we moved to Langhorne and we got to work. And if you're not familiar with where Langhorne is, it's in southeast Pennsylvania, not too far from the city of Philadelphia. And I have to say to you, and I can only give credit to God for this, but by God's grace, the church has grown and the church has matured. The truth is the Lord's blessed the work so generously that we've completely outgrown our meeting space. We regularly run out of seats. We regularly run out of parking spots when we're hosting services and other events, something I'm extremely grateful for it. And it does pose some new challenges that we're trying to figure out where we're going to meet as we've exceeded the space that we have. Our building isn't big enough to accommodate the people participating in the ministry. So that's a story for another day. But the question or the premise that I started with as I started telling my personal story of church leadership was that there were certain lessons that I've learned in this process that I think have a lot to do with online platform development. So I'm just going to pose that as a question. What does this have to do with online platform development? What kind of connection would exist between leading a local church or a local ministry and planting or starting an online platform? Well, I'll say it this way. There are many factors that I think helped facilitate the growth of our church, many of which are spiritual and providential in nature. And so we didn't have control over those factors. And there will be certain things related to the growth of your own platform that you will not have any control over. It will just seem like a gift of providence to you. And if that happens to you, that's a wonderful thing. Accept it. But there are a few things that in our context, we had the ability to address. So let me explain what they were. And by the way, if you're in the process of building an online platform, there is a lot you can learn from a local church, especially if your platform at some point might include a membership community. Membership communities are something that many of us are seeking to facilitate, and some of us are already leading. Phyllis Jenkins, she's one of our members here in Platform Launchers. She hosts a membership community for writers, and she helps writers write their books and tell their stories, and she's doing some exciting things about that. Just before we started the podcast, we were talking about some of the wonderful ways that she's been able to serve people in her membership community, and I'll tell you, if you're looking to begin a membership community at some point, or even if you really aren't, but you just want to make sure that your platform is a welcoming place and a user-friendly type experience for those that utilize your content, there's a lot you can learn from a local church. And the first principle that I want to throw out there, the first kind of checklist item that I hope you'll think about, it starts, I think in many respects, with aesthetics. Now, again, we're talking not about the things we can't control, because there's deeper level things we can't control. But among the things we can control, one of the easiest first steps, or one of the easiest things that you could kind of look at on your checklist right at the beginning, are aesthetics. Now, when I started leading our church, I remember taking a good look at the building that we were given. And I thought, we got to make some immediate changes. There were some things right away that we needed to address. The building, honestly, to me, maybe to some people they wouldn't feel this way, but to me, the building looked a little neglected. It wasn't trashed. It just looked a little neglected, looked a little forgotten, almost like it was just saying to you, our best years are behind us. And I thought, we got to do some things to update this. I remember seeing some graffiti on the sidewalk, and I asked somebody how long it had been there, and they said, oh, that's been there for years. And awkwardly, it was kind of vulgar graffiti. And so I'm thinking, not really the type of thing you want on the sidewalk in front of a church. And so I asked if anything had been done to try and remove it, and some things had, but nothing succeeded. So I actually remember I got a concrete grinder, and I ended up grinding graffiti off the sidewalk. That was the only thing I could find that actually worked to get it off there. But there was also some overgrown landscaping. There was also some dead landscaping. I remember right in the front yard of the church, there was a big old tree that was mostly dead. And I thought, that is not the most inviting thing that people are going to that you want people to see right when they pull up to the front of your church, a dead tree. So I thought, we got to get rid of that. There was clutter throughout the building, actually, like a lot of clutter. I don't know what it is when things enter a church. It's like they're never allowed to leave. And so we had to remove a lot of clutter. And then the seating in the building needed some either repair or updates or replacement. We ended up replacing it with a different kind of seating. Our carpets needed to be replaced. They were faded and ripped up in spots, all sorts of things I was noticing. So we started working on the aesthetics. And I bring that up as principle number one because I want to ask this question. How long has it been since you've given some thought to the aesthetics of your online platform? So some follow-ups that I could ask to that is, do your colors match, right? Do you have like some theme colors? Do your colors match? Does your site have a logical theme and a logical flow to it when someone visits it? Are your pages or your branding, are they looking a little cluttered? I'm thinking of the lower level of our church building. You couldn't walk through certain spots in it because it just had so much stuff that needed to be removed. Well, sometimes a web page can start looking a little cluttered as well. Have you looked around your website and tested your links in a while just to make sure they're all working properly? How about this one? How does your website look on a desktop versus some form of mobile device? A lot of times we prepare our websites that are usually built on a desktop computer, but a lot of times they're accessed via mobile, and sometimes we don't think to check how it's appearing on mobile. So those are just a few thoughts related to the aesthetics, but how about this? This is number 2 on my checklist. Does your platform have what I'll call a welcoming atmosphere? Now, if you visit our church on a Sunday, when someone arrives at our church, one of the things they're going to notice right away is that the front door, when you walk up to the building, the front door, you're not even going to have to open it for yourself in most contexts. It's going to be held open for you. You're going to be welcome the second you approach that building. That front door is going to be held open for you. And you'll be then invited to enjoy some coffee and some snacks that we have available right there in the foyer. As you prepare to walk into the sanctuary, you're going to notice a couple things. One of the things you'll notice is that I'll be standing right by the sanctuary doors to greet you as you walk in, and then you're going to hear some light music playing in the background. You'll hopefully also hear the sound of some pleasant conversations as people are just sitting down and catching up on their week or talking with some of their friends and family. You'll also notice right there in the sanctuary a table that says "Welcome" in big letters on it. And it's one of the first things guests see as they walk into that space. And as you walk into that area, you could find more information on that table. You could find a variety of free books that you could take home with you and enjoy those things. And I use that as an example of this concept of a welcoming atmosphere, because when someone visits your online platform, I want you to ask the question, will it feel dry and uninviting to them when they first visit? Or will they get the immediate impression that they're welcomed? So do your texts and do your graphics, do all of that, those pieces, do they seem to anticipate the arrival of visitors? Or is your platform something that only makes sense once you've been there for a while? I've experienced some web pages and some online platforms that really take a long time to figure out. And I think, boy, they could make this a lot more welcoming. They can make this a lot more user-friendly. And I'll also say this, if you're leading a membership community or if you desire to build one, or if you're selling products or things like that, is there a place on your site that shows people where to start and how to get the most value out of what you're offering? You want it to be a welcoming atmosphere. I'll even tell you, and I mention this every week. I probably sound like a broken record. Right now, as I'm recording our podcast, our members club is live on the call here with me. We had a couple new members join us this week, and one, her name's Jody, and another is Phil. We're grateful to have them with us. But we started off tonight by just welcoming them to the group and just expressing how excited we are that they're here with us. And I wonder, in the context of your platform, does it convey a welcoming atmosphere, or is something else conveyed? When people come to it, does it look like something that you just have to figure out before you could actually find it useful? It's just something to consider. All right, third principle, or third thing that I'll kind of put on the checklist here is this: signage and branding. So in the church context that I'm serving in, the previous church had a very dated looking sign out in front of the church. It had some movable letters on it, but those letters looked old and yellowed, and they were actually very hard to change. Because they were so hard to change, the sign very rarely got updated. So that wasn't so great, because it was the type of sign that was meant to be updated. So that wasn't so good. And I thought, you know what? No one really wants to be updating that sign all the time. We need to change it. We need to make it something that looks a little bit brighter and better. So we changed the sign to make it almost continually useful without having to be updated. We feature a large image of our church logo, and then we put our web address right underneath it, because I've discovered that most people visit, even in a church context, most people visit the website before they ever walk through the doors. And so I thought, let's put a big picture of our logo, and let's put the website right underneath it. We also added more lighting to make the sign really highly visible at all times of the day. And so let's translate this now to our platforms. And let me just ask the question: is your logo, is it visible on your website? Are the direction and the navigating tools working correctly? Or how hard does someone have to work to find the information they need when they attempt to interact with you or your content? You want to make sure that your signage and your branding are pointing people in the right direction. It communicates a lot about what you're building online. All right, number 4 on my checklist here would be group assimilation. So in the church context, it's important for us to get to know new people, help them get to know other people that are in the church, and help them figure out a way to find a kind of a spot that they belong in the local church, a way that they could serve, a way that they could start getting involved. We value group assimilation. And so for that reason, we host a variety of fellowship-oriented events. We actually just had a really fun luncheon this past Sunday, and a lot of people participated in that. It was really good. We also have a variety of ministry teams that people are welcome to join based on their areas of interest, based on their areas of strength. And so in the platform context, it might be useful to ask the question: are you creating a sense of community inside your platform? Now, again, this is especially important if you plan to offer a membership option of any kind. You want to create opportunities for members to get to know one another. So that could happen through your group meetings. It could happen through special events. It could happen just through connections that happen when there isn't a formal meeting. But you want to encourage interaction. You want to encourage collaboration, and then celebrate the connections that are being made. Make your members feel welcome, and then celebrate when they connect with one another. I actually just got a message earlier today. Two of our members had the chance to meet up earlier today. They shared a picture with me of them meeting up. One lives in Michigan, one lives in Florida, but they actually got together for lunch while one was visiting Florida. And I thought that was great, and I wanted to celebrate that. I thought that was a cool thing to see. And so you want to think about some group assimilation, especially if you're going to be leading a membership community. We try and do that in the local church. We try and do that in our platform. I would encourage you to have that on your checklist. All right, 2 more. Number 5 on my list is this: functional systems. So our local church, we've developed functional systems, developed functional policies, and this helps us maintain momentum. It helps us reduce conflict because it helps us all to remain on the same page. I also think functional systems, just having systems for different things, it helps reduce leadership burnout. And so in your platform, you want to just think about, do you have some systems and policies in place to help guide your platform and your membership community? Are things predictable? Do they have a good rhythm to them? Just think about some of the systems that are in place. Are they functional? Is there a routine? Is there a way for people to understand what the weekly routine of your platform happens to be when content is released, when there's group get togethers, things of that nature? Do you have systems for it? Last on my list is this. This is number 6, leadership development. I think healthy churches replicate leaders. And I think healthy platforms and online membership communities do the same. I view our membership community here at Platform Launchers as a place where leaders and learners can gather for information, inspiration, and accountability, and then use those principles that we teach and we model here to then be a blessing to those that are being served by their platforms. So basically, we're trying to be leaders who make leaders. And I want to just ask the question, what kind of investments are you making in the lives of those who are studying and observing your content and your style of leadership? Are you showing them how to lead so that they can in turn lead others when they build what they're building? Let me say this as we wrap this up. If we want our platforms to be of service to others, we need to make our platforms welcoming. We need to make them user-friendly. And I'd encourage you to use this list that I just shared as a little bit of a checklist to just double check to make sure what you're building has either most or all of these elements. It might also help you determine if there's an area of your platform that might need a little revision or an update. All of our platforms need to be revised from time to time. All of our platforms need to be updated from time to time. Sometimes the things that seem so obvious to us aren't as obvious to those who are trying to utilize our content. And if you find something that can be improved, I would encourage you to improve it quickly so that your platform can become the welcoming and inviting type of place that's user-friendly, the type of place, the type of content repository that you envisioned it would be when you first created it. Make it be the type of place that people are eager to visit and enjoy visiting, and the type of place that they'd even be willing to stick around and utilize what you have there for a while because you've made it so user-friendly. You've made it so welcoming. People get a taste of your personality. They get to interact with you. They get to interact with the people that you surround yourself with. And ultimately, you can make it the type of place that helps people learn in the context of community. Before we finish up, I just want to let you know each week, speaking of community, we have a wonderful community here inside Platform Launchers. We call it our Members Club. And there's a variety of us who are building online platforms on all different topics. We'd invite you to come and take a test drive. We offer a free 14-day test drive right there on our website. We'd invite you to stop by platformlaunchers.com and you could check it out. You can also check out our launch plan course. Even if you don't join us as a member someday, we hope at some point you'll take our launch plan course, and it'll show you how to build, grow, and monetize an online platform. And I think you'll find that very helpful. I hope it's a blessing to you, especially if you decide to be a what do we call it now? Like a digital nomad or an online entrepreneur, someone who wants to work from home to be a blessing to your family. We got the information there to help you do that. Just visit us at platformlaunchers.com and you could find it all there. But that's it for us this week. Thanks again, as always, for joining us, and we look forward to catching up with you again next time.